Well, one of the biggest stories of the week has been the plan by the Arts and Culture Minister, Nathi Mthethwa, to spend 22 million rand on what he called a monumental flag, a massive installation of our flag on a pole. It will be over 100 metres high in Tshwane. Of course, his ministry now says that they're reviewing the situation. The President, Cyril Ramaphosa, said last night he had told Mthethwa to just can the idea. Professor William Gumede is Professor of Politics. He's at the Democracy Works Foundation. He joins us now. Professor, good afternoon to you. This idea saw so many people getting so angry. We've seen, quite strange ideas coming from government before. What is it that made so many people so angry this time?
I think just the extravagance of it. I mean, it is just mind-boggling. At a time that we're really in a very difficult financial crisis, we just came out of COVID, and also, the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on the country. And I mean, a real crisis, high unemployment levels. I mean, unemployment levels as high, most probably, as a country during the Depression. And I think to come up with something like that really is not taking, or rather it shows how, the limited public resources that we have has just being spent so wastefully and fruitlessly.
I would suggest, tell me if I get this wrong, Professor, but I would suggest that this is probably the toughest time for South Africans since the end of apartheid. Let's just say since 1994. Food prices are going up, petrol prices going up to unbelievable levels, so many young people out of work. And for the first time that I can remember since 94, reports of people actually starving to death in South Africa. I couldn't believe that. I'd say this is the toughest time we've had.
No, absolutely. And I guess also, it also tells you something most probably about government, also about the failure of the ANC government since 1994. The minister actually initially excused himself, and he said, look, this is to promote social cohesion. And it's quite interesting things to look at, because social cohesion really has been undermined by incompetency by government not governing inclusively, bringing all communities together, the lack of appointment of diverse people into government, or, giving diverse people contracts and competent people contracts, the breakdown of the rule of law, the rise of violence in the country. So social cohesion has actually been broken down by the failure of the government, and now the government is trying or wanting now to create this flag at humongous costs. And, in a way, it also shows how this, or represents how this government has governed based on gimmicks, rather than dealing with the real issues that are facing people.
Is it because gimmicks are easy? It's easy to build a 100 meters tall flag. Much harder to solve unemployment.
Absolutely. Again, the shortcuts. So it's almost this been a government of shortcuts. So rather than, deal with corruption, hold people accountable, prosecute people, no, the government response is let's build a flag to the tune of 22 million upwards. Really, it's an indictment. It's almost, in a way, it's almost a symbol of the ANC right now, where the ANC is now. The ineffectiveness in government, but we're sitting in our biggest crisis, most probably, I think, since the Second World War. This crisis is even bigger, I think, than even the crises during the apartheid era, just in terms of the impact, the financial impact on people. So it seems that the government in the biggest crisis of our generation, or a couple of generations, have run out of ideas to deal with it, and has run out of the energy and the imagination to deal with, the real struggles of people, and then come up with something as superficial and as gimmicky as erecting or wanting to erect a flag like that.
There are probably some sort of big picture issues here, and there's some small sort of political things here. I want to do one of the big picture things here. You spoke about social cohesion. The minister spoke about social cohesion. And it would seem to me that when the pie is getting bigger, when we're all getting richer, or all still optimistic and hopeful that we will get richer, it's easy to get along with your neighbor under those circumstances. When the pie is getting smaller, and you think to yourself, well, my child now has maybe a 1 in 5 chance of getting a job. I'm going to pull every string I can to get my child that job. I'm going to break rules. I'm going to call people who have the same surname I do, who look like me, whether I speak Zulu, whether I speak Abavenda, whatever it is. That's what I'm going to do. The point I'm trying to make is that if the pie is getting smaller and the economy shrinks and there are fewer jobs, that must have an impact on social cohesion. It makes it harder to build social cohesion.
Absolutely. Even if the pie is smaller, in order to promote social cohesion, a government must govern in the widest interest of everyone and look after everyone equitably. So what we see with the ANC is the ANC so far has only been looking after its own members, or rather small number of its members, a small group of people, rather than governing in the interests of the widest number of South Africans. Now, that is a very important thing in getting people, to give people a sense of belonging. So even if we have little in the country, say, we didn't have the kind of resources that we have, but people can believe that the government is governing in the interest of everyone, and that the government is honest, and the government is using all of the talents of the whole of society and all of the resources of the whole of society in a fair way. That will help with social cohesion. So it's not necessarily that because the pie is small, but really it's a big issue. Really is not governing in the interest of everyone, and governing just in the interest of very small groups, sometimes very small groups on the basis of color or ethnic or political affection. And that really is the problem that undermines social cohesion.
So, that's the big issue that's happening here, but there's a small issue as well, which is that the Arts and Culture Minister, Nathi Mthethwa, he's been in that position for a long time. He was the Police Minister before that. I was reminded this week, he was the Police Minister during Marikana. I'd actually forgotten he was the Police Minister during Marikana. I'm struggling to find an achievement that Nathi Mthethwa can point to and say, as Arts and Culture Minister, I did that. And yet, despite all of that, despite the fact that the arts and culture sector, I don't think you'll find anyone in the arts and culture sector who supports the minister after the lockdown, he's still in cabinet. That's the sort of small part of the problem, the microcosm of this, is that there's no accountability, it would seem. I realize as a presenter that's a strong view for me to say. Let me put it to you.
The thing is, really, again, with all of the resources and talent of the country, that our cabinets have been recycled. So, our current our cabinet really is not fit for purpose for the crisis that we have, and maybe the thing is, but outrage people to the extent is that the quality of talent that we have in this country are not being used, but people are being recycled in cabinet positions for years and years. So it's almost a recycling of incompetence, a recycling of corruption, it's a recycling of waste and lack of imagination. So, and that is why the pie since 1994, the economic pie, has been getting smaller and smaller, while our competitors, if you think of the countries that started the same as us in 1994, their economic pies have been getting larger and larger, and ours has been reduced. And it is directly related to the fact that, we have not appointed people on merit in cabinet and in the public service, and we haven't used the strength of our diversity of the country. So this country, the world's most diverse country, and diversity brings you so much ideas and the potential of innovation and the resources and networks, not only in South Africa, but globally. But we've used a small number of people that we've recycled, and often people without a competency.
And what this also leads to is a cabinet with a very high average age, when we have a country with a very low average age.
Yes, no, absolutely. And the thing is, if when a country is in a crisis that we are in now, in terms of, just as unemployment is one of the high unemployment. Now, normally in a crisis, the way for a country to get out of a crisis really is to try to get the best skilled people at the right places, running the right institutions. And so that's a fundamental. So it's not necessarily resources. And I know people often say, as a country, we don't have the resources. That's not true. It's, the resources is much more important in development and prosperity and wealth creation is the talent, and bringing that talent to run the right kind of the critical institutions, and related to that is holding people accountable if they don't deliver. And we haven't done that. That is why our pie has been shrinking, and that is why we are struggling with social cohesion in the country.
Professor William Gumede, thank you very much indeed.